Since I enjoyed this Capra so much, let's change everything. What's going on, everybody? Back with the Axial 4-wheel steer Capra. Did the review of this, had a lot of fun out driving it on the rocks. We took it through that comp course. It did really well. And after that, I just really enjoyed the 4-wheel steer. I don't have any 4-wheel steer vehicles right now in my stable, so this is going to be that one. I've got scale nationals coming up in a handful of months, and practicing with 4-wheel steer, definitely something that I could use a little bit more wheel time at, since I haven't done it in quite some time. So this is a great little test bed. With that being said, need some parts. Need some parts to change this thing over to be able to really fit with more of the setup that I prefer. So one of the things that I've always mentioned with the Capra is that the gearing is really bad, and that is mainly due to the transmission. The stock transmission doesn't have enough reduction, so we're going to change that. I picked up a skid plate from UC Fab. This is a Delrin and carbon fiber version, but it's got a bolt pattern that matches a standard Axial 3-gear style. Now, I've got a Vanquish 3-gear transmission kit here. We're going to be able to drop in there to get us a proper amount of reduction in that transmission. We are going to lose the dig function. I could add it to that Vanquish 3-gear, but for this, since I'm kind of practicing for scale nationals in class 3, you have to choose between 4-wheel steer or dig. So I'm just going to stick this truck to a strictly 4-wheel steer based platform. Also, I want to get the ride height down a little bit. I'm going to be using some parts that are the Incision S8E shocks. These are the shocks that come on the Vanquish Phoenix. Now, the Phoenix comes with 80mm shocks, but all of the parts are on the website that you can build a set of 90mm. These will be available later in a regular complete shock kit, but for now, I'm going to build a set from parts. That'll allow us to get the ride height of this truck down a little bit further. Something just to keep it a little bit more planted on the terrain. Changing the shocks out. I also picked up some SSD knuckles that I'm going to drop on the front and rear. I picked up tires and wheels as well. We've got some Proline Hyrax. The Nittos did well on the rocks that we were at, but can always do better. So Hyraxes in a G8 compound. Also some Crawler Innovations foams. I've got mediums for the rear, soft for the front. I'm also going to add some underdrive gears to the rear axle and some overdrive portal gears to the front. Will help the turning even more. It'll increase our climbing ability as well. Little things like that just to make this thing fit in the way that I want to see the performance. So a lot to do. We're going to dive in. I'm going to get all of this stuff completed. Then we'll go over it and get it back out on the rocks. Electronics are another part of this. For right now, I'm going to change the parts. Maybe I'll leave the electronics until I go to the next stage, or maybe we'll get them changed here as well. I don't know. Let's dive into it and see how we feel when we're done. Had an awesome day out on the rocks again with the Capra and its new transformation. I changed a lot. Doesn't mean that I didn't like how the truck was at the outset. It's just what I like to do with trucks that I like. And when this truck was released, and after I got it out on the rocks that first time, I was just like, I really enjoy it. And I wanted to do some things to just make it more like I want it. But there are a few things that I didn't discuss at the beginning of the video. So I did end up changing out all of the electronics. Just so happened to go down that route. I ended up using a Holmes Hobbies 2700 kV Polar Pro, the stubby length, so a little bit shorter than the standard length. And then I used a Castle Copperhead ESC. The radio, I've got a Futaba 2106 GF receiver in there, but I also got that Spectrum DX5 that I wanted to show some programming on, but it was the transmitter only version. And since I changed out the ESC because I was changing out the motor, I wasn't able to run that. So I am going to go through that, and I'll do a little bit of a video on 4-wheel steer programming, but we'll get to that here before too long because this truck isn't 100% done. But also, after I changed out the motor and ESC, I ended up changing out the servos. Now, since I've got 2 servos on this truck, they can be a little power hungry. So the front servo, I had a Holmes Hobbies Direct Power SHV 800 V3 servo that I was able to throw in there. So that is powered off of the battery leads, which helps so that you don't have to have as strong of a BEC in the ESC because I am running a Futaba S9177 SV rear servo. The front servo is around 800 ounce inches. The rear servo is around 650 ounce inches. You do still need a strong servo for the rear, especially when you've got the truck up, doing a climb or something like that, and you want to try and rear steer. You've got all of the weight of the vehicle on that rear, so you need a strong servo for the rear. Even though it's not the main servo, you still gotta go for it. But beyond that, we did do all of those modifications initially. The one thing that I forgot and is severely noticeable while I was driving today is I didn't have any springs. The shocks here, I built these shocks from just parts that you can buy on the website right now. So I ended up taking the stock springs off and putting them on here, but they're longer springs, so it ended up basically being like I had way too much preload. So this thing was too stiff. It sat lower like I wanted, but it was too stiff. So I need to get springs on here that are softer and are the appropriate length, and that will further help the performance of this truck. It's definitely something I could notice that I want to change. Overall, the weight of this thing, not too bad. I did put brass knuckles front and rear, so we added that there. I also do have a brass clamp ring on the inside of the wheel here, which gives me a little bit more weight as well. I normally run brake weights rather than a brass ring, but since this is a portal axle rig and it's already a little bit wider, if you run a brake weight, you have to run a wider hub, and I wanted to try and keep this thing as narrow as possible, so I went that route instead. In this case, throwing it on the scale, this thing is at 7.00 pounds. So that is with a battery. I've got a 4300 milliamp Gens Ace Adventure pack in the front. So it gives you an idea of the mass of this truck currently. Other than changing the springs out, this truck is pretty much like I wanted it. Now, the amount of overdrive that I ran in this is pretty considerable. I've got front overdrive portal gears, and then I've got underdrive ring and pinion in the rear axle. So it's got some significant overdrive, you can definitely tell, but it handled really well. It was about what I was thinking I wanted. And the biggest reason that I want to drive this truck more is that I want to use it as practice for four-wheel steering for Class 3 in Sorka Scale Nationals coming up in April, something like that. So I just need to be more familiar with it. I don't drive four-wheel steer very often. I haven't had a four-wheel steer truck of my own for quite some time. So more practice, the better. This is going to be the perfect base for that until I've got my own Class 3 done with rear steer like this truck. Definitely going to see more and more of this truck, and I'm going to try and continue to do timed courses because it pushes you to drive different, puts a little bit of pressure on you. Even if you set a course yourself, it's still helpful. Definitely something I recommend. I'm glad that I gave the Capra another chance, and with four-wheel steer, this truck became something that turned out to be really happy with. So, you haven't seen the last of it. It's gonna be around. I'm gonna be more proactive about testing and driving and getting ready for Sorka Scale Nationals, because it'll be here before we know it. But with that, hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit more of the Capra content. As always, if you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, and hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Okay, so again today, I was out crawling by myself, so I was wearing a chest mount, so the camera angles were not great, so I'm cutting in and out here. But anyway, what we've got, I set up a 10-gate course, and we're just kind of running through kind of a first gate. I did set this course a little bit harder than the course that I ran a couple of weeks ago with this car, just because it was just for me and I'm trying to test myself. But this was a gate where I threw the getting through the gate itself was the easy part, but it's getting beyond the gate where it was a pointy knob there that you had to get the belly over. I also have been trying to do some kind of very steep side hill like this. The car gets almost out of view, but trying to use the rear steer to stabilize the car while I go through those off camber is super helpful and just something you have to get used to. So if you steer the wrong way, you can easily push the car off the line more than anything. This gate here was kind of just a little bit of a challenging one. It looks much smaller in video than it does in real life. Obviously, this is a poor angle to show the difficulty of some of these obstacles themselves. This is another kind of a difficult side hill gate with a lot of features in the middle of the gate that want to either grab the truck or not allow you to progress easily. So I'm going to try and get the front end as far up as I can and try and get just right up to it. And then I end up having to shoot the gate just at the very end. I knew I was through it. I just needed to clear. So a little bit of throttle to blip past, but while trying not to roll myself over. This one is another tough one. I put myself in a bad spot, ended up having to, rolling the truck over, and then I had to go roll it over by hand. If you're not familiar in competition crawling, a hand rollover like that is a 5-point penalty. Hitting a gate is a 10-point penalty, and a reverse is a 1-point penalty. So those are the main penalties. If you touch the truck inadvertently, it's also a 10-point penalty, but that's something that doesn't happen as often. So this one, just getting the truck wedged down in that climb, and then have to just try and let it work before it wants to climb up rather than flipping itself over backwards. I do have a lot of overdrive in this truck, which is super helpful in tough climbs like this. The car gets a little bit out of view here, but just had to slowly let that front grab the traction with the overdrive and then have it pull itself up that little nasty climb. This one here, coming down through a deep V crack, just having to straddle both sides and just work your way slowly down without falling down into the feature. Downhills like that, you really only get one good shot. This was a steep climb with a V crack and a ledge, so a lot of things to deal with, and having to try and get the truck to settle was a little bit difficult. This one I ended up struggling with for quite a while. The other thing with being on time is you only can mess with a gate for so long before you have to make a decision whether you're going to be able to clear it, or if you're going to end up wasting too much time and taking too many simple points like reverses, where you're going to end up, causing yourself more penalties than it would be to just take a gate. In this case, I decided to straddle the gate, get the progress, and move forward so that I could try and finish my course with time remaining. Simple drop here, just an easy gimme gate basically, and then this was the final gate. Again, this is a much steeper gate than it looks like. The truck ends up wanting to go over backwards and just having to catch it. I did run that 2700 kV Polar Pro in this truck, but I put in a small pinion. I wanted to just get it, smooth it out and slow down, but I went with a 12 tooth pinion, and I think that was maybe a little bit too slow. I'm probably going to jump up to a 15 tooth pinion with the 56 tooth spur that I'm running, and I think that'll give me just enough wheel speed to have what I'm looking for, but also have that slow control. Okay, this course should be a little more difficult. Starting at the bottom, coming up this big climb, side hill over here, coming around, coming through this crack 3, up 4, lots of nasty undercuts, trying to get up and around on this one. 4, 5 is up here on the riprap, coming through, and I've got a little loop here, so coming from 5 around, down 6, up 7, around, got to get down and then come up 8 through this V crack. 9 is another side hill, 10 is coming up that crack that we went down last time. So starting the second course here, long steep climb. First time it just wanted to reject me, ended up having to catch myself backing out of it. See, right there is where I could have used a little bit more wheel speed, get that truck settled down faster. So I hit hit that ramp or that ledge with a little bit more momentum to get myself up. And once I got to a place, I was able to comfortably finish the climb. Then I have this nasty side hill here where the truck is out of frame right now, but getting it in position. It's a steep side hill. It doesn't obviously look like it too much in this video, but the rear steer super helpful with keeping the truck planted. And come up here. This is a nasty climb in a nasty hole. Lots of ledges to grab the tires. Lots of just everything that makes it trickier. Here I end up kind of binding myself up, and then as it goes, I end up almost touching a gate right there, but eventually just kind of able to work it out, clear through that gate. Definitely not super easy. This is a situation where you end up with a I ended up with a very tight gate. I put this to be tough on purpose, and I set it so that you had to try and figure out how to get up on top of that rock, but that left gate there is the one that caused you to push into these nasty undercuts. This was another situation again where I ended up having to just make a decision of what was going to be doable, or if I was going to just end up wasting all my time and still hitting gates. So after struggling with this undercut, I ended up actually rolling over down into the hole, and I just decided to cut my losses and take the gate. But I did it. I wasn't concentrated on where my chest camera was focusing, so I ended up having to cut it because you couldn't see basically anything I was doing. Fun little climb up a V-crack. Didn't need any rear steer there. Rear steer obviously isn't something you need to use all the time. It's best if you're not using it, just because it's keeps the truck more predictable and it's one less thing to think about. But this was a tough gate, super steep off camber. I tried to get the truck settled, and it didn't end up working out all that well. I tried a rear steer thing here, and I don't know if it was the right call or not, but if you have to shoot away from a gate like that and you're in rear steer, it's just one more thing to try and predict, which is not ideal. Now we have that steep wedge, or that crack again with another rollover. Unfortunate. Rollovers they suck, but it's one of those things, like a lot of times you can get out of a rollover, but trying to balance damage and points.
Time left is 47 seconds. All right, this one should be a pretty tough one again. So down one, weird off camber with a low gate that's in danger. 2 is here, it's an up. 3 is across this nasty ledge, or gap, I guess. So 3, 4, across that V crack. 5 is the side hill. 6 is the same up that we had before, but I'm gonna try and do it without dropping down. So 6, what was that? Was that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6. Come around. 7 is an up here, then drop back down. 8 in the crack coming through. 9 is this up. 10 is that one there. 6 minutes again.
So this was the hardest of the courses I set for the day. Again, this one, a downhill, but with that low gate in just a really nasty position. So trying to find a controlled descent down there will prove to be more difficult than I was capable of doing on the first shot. As you can see, I ended up pirouetting right into it. So
that's a tough one.
Next, I set up another really tough climb that is a longer wheelbase, or longer height than the wheelbase of the vehicle, and I was not able to get the car to start climbing this. I tried multiple times from the left side, trying to kind of stretch the wheelbase by hitting it at an angle, but again, this was another one that was just more difficult than the truck was ready for. So I tried here, flipping the car back over, ended up coming from the far right side, and that didn't work, so I just lined up, drove over top of the gate and go. Now that would be 2 gates, so that would already be 20 penalty points. Typical point out for a course is 40, so halfway through my penalty points already. This course was more difficult, or as difficult, I guess, as I thought I was setting it. So trying to make it hard on myself to try and push my control a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to build courses for yourself. So navigating through, a little bit of rear steer just to put myself in a better spot, but it didn't work. I did it too late, didn't do it with enough careful planning, and end up so I would be at 30 penalty points already. 10 more points and I would be out. I think I had a couple of reverses, so I don't even have enough points to take another gate.
Getting flustered, making mistakes.
Like I said there, I was flustered at this point, and it made me, even when it's not an actual competition, you get flustered, you're not doing well. I knew already that I hit 3 gates. So here's another reverse that's I know I probably had a few on that ledge, so I probably only had 4 points remaining before I would have pointed this whole course out already. And this is the, I think maybe the 4th gate, maybe the 5th. So through there, then this was repeating that climb that was the first gate on the previous course, but doing it without dropping down made it a little bit more challenging. If this was a real course, I could have done like a chalk boundary line to force that maneuver rather than being able to drop down too. So I don't know if I got all of the gates there, if I had to jump through, if I missed something on camera. Just kind of coming through that gap there, that was a pretty easy one. This is another gnarly climb though. It's off camber where the truck is, and then it's climbing a ledge, so you're not solid to anything.
I feel like I don't have enough time left.
I knew that I was already running short on time. One of those and then right here, I know that I don't have. So another reverse, not sure where that would have put me, but I knew that I didn't have much time and was getting flustered. I wanted to finish this before the, and right there, I ran into that gate, so that actually would have pointed me out before I finished this course, if I wouldn't have pointed out with reverses already. So,
Ouch.
Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.